Mastery is a self-help guide that describes the path to intellectual and creative excellence. Robert Greene explains how to achieve such mastery in 3 stages, and he argues that pursuing it yields a fulfilling life and great creative power. Greene is a best-selling author known for the 48 Laws of Power, his guide to power dynamics and social dominance. In 2012, he wrote Mastery to explain creative excellence and chart a clear course for anyone to reach it. Our guide explains mastery in 4 parts. Greene's definition of mastery, what it entails and how to achieve it. Foundational training, how to build a solid foundation of knowledge and skills. Creative independence, how to find your creative direction and experiment with ideas. Mastery, how to continue working and growing until you attain holistic, intuitive virtuosity in your field. We'll compare and contrast Greene's ideas with perspectives from The Art of Learning, Peak, George Leonard's Mastery, and others. We'll also point out where Greene appears to contradict himself and whether it's possible to achieve mastery at any age. Mastery is creative power. Greene first explains that mastery is the highest level of creative excellence, and it means that you've fully grasped your discipline or field. Masters are experts who make breakthrough discoveries, innovate new forms of art, or shift the paradigm in their fields. For example, William Shakespeare masterfully shaped English literature through his now acclaimed playwriting, poetry, and innovative uses of prose and narrative. Short-form note: in Mastery, The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment, George Leonard defines mastery as a continual journey, and there's no end or perfection of the skill. Rather, the practice is the point in and of itself. This contrasts with Greene, who suggests that there is an end of sorts, a point at which your mastery has reached the highest level. According to Greene, mastery has 2 components: technical proficiency and social know-how. Component number 1. Technical proficiency. Greene says that thoroughly grasping the established skills and knowledge of your field enables you to break new ground. In other words, technical proficiency lets you explore the limits of your field, break conventions, and experiment with new forms, methods, and ideas. Think of how jazz musicians start with established music and then experiment to create unique styles. Short-form note: in The Art of Learning, Josh Waitzkin demonstrates the boundary-breaking power of a master. After mastering the art of Tai Chi, he developed new techniques by recording sparring sessions and studying actions that he and his partner performed from instinct. Waitzkin then systematized these actions, turning them into new techniques in his repertoire, and he went on to become the world champion with those very techniques. Component number 2. Social know-how. Greene argues that since other people can make or break your career, a true master learns how to read, understand, and make use of people. He uses social know-how to gain supporters, diffuse conflicts, and navigate to the top of his field. Without this skill set, Greene asserts that you can't maintain your position long enough to reach mastery. Short-form note: in How to Talk to Anyone, Leo Lowndes corroborates Greene's assertion that social aptitude is crucial to success. To succeed socially, she suggests learning to interact comfortably with anyone. This involves learning common nonverbal signals, such as body language and eye contact, as well as how to create rapport and turn casual interactions into meaningful conversations. 3 stages to the process. Attaining mastery is a lifelong process of growth and discovery. Throughout life, the master continually expands her horizons by challenging her set habits and assumptions, and she always pursues what makes her feel most alive. Short-form note: in Mastery, The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment, George Leonard agrees, and he emphasizes that the point is the process itself. Leonard explains that much of mastery comes from learning to love the inevitable plateaus. Progress comes in short spurts, but you'll spend most of the time working hard with little evidence of improvement. As Leonard says, embracing these moments is the essence of mastery. Fulfillment is the intrinsic pleasure of practicing your chosen craft, rather than the temporary, extrinsic rewards it may yield. Greene explains that you can develop mastery by following 3 stages, which we'll explore in detail throughout the guide. Stage number 1. Foundational training. Starting out in your field, you need to learn the ropes. Commit to working hard and you'll gradually become adept at your field's basic skills and gain a feeling for its social dynamics. Stage number 2. Creative independence. With some experience under your belt, you can begin to pursue what interests you most. You'll exercise your creative voice and gain attention, critical and supportive, for your work. Stage number 3. Mastery. Having committed long years to your discipline, you've developed sophisticated knowledge and skills. You've risen to the top by setting your own standards and pursuing them, and you now have high-level creative power that enables you to push boundaries and comprehensively understand the state of your field. The Dreyfus model of skill acquisition. Greene's description of the 3 stages of mastery is a model of skill development. That is, it describes how to go from novice to mastery in a given field. There are many such models. A notable example is the Dreyfus model of skill acquisition, which describes 5 stages of skill progression. Novice, advanced, beginner, competent, proficient, expert. Unlike Greene, Dreyfus doesn't emphasize the social dimensions of mastery. Instead, he describes in detail how to develop technical skill. For example, Dreyfus's novice and advanced beginner stages focus on grueling repetition of basic principles, such as how to dribble a basketball, without concern for social know-how. Similarly to Greene, Dreyfus argues that at the highest level, experts comprehensively and intuitively grasp their skills. For example, a master chess player can recognize thousands of subtle variations on a chess position, each of which calls for a different response. Much the same, fluent speakers of a language can discriminate between minute differences in expression of everything from word choice to tone of voice and speed of speech. Find your calling. Greene explains that throughout history, masters have referred to an inner force that guided their work. Whatever we call it, we all have this sense of direction within us. It's why you feel drawn to some things but not others, music or math, academia or entrepreneurship. Short-form note. In The Art of Learning, Josh Waitzkin describes this phenomenon as a deep feeling of rightness or resonance with the discipline that calls you. Writing of his first encounter with chess, he recounts a visceral, almost psychic pull toward the street-side boards he saw in New York City. From this natural inclination, Waitzkin explains, your personal style emerges, the natural, intuitive way in which you approach the skill, and honoring it is crucial to reaching excellence. By acting according to your inner sense of direction, you'll develop your creative potential and strive toward mastery. According to Greene, everything will naturally fall into place as you follow that inner force. Get in touch with it by performing 3 tasks. Task number 1. Reflect on your childhood. According to Greene, we feel the inner voice most strongly in childhood, but we often lose touch with it. Think back to what you love to do, and consider what's unique about you, such as your personality quirks, core character traits, or unusual hobbies. This will start to reawaken your inner voice. Task number 2. Blur the line between work and life. Whatever work you're drawn to, choose to view it as integral to who you are. Greene explains that in the past, people saw work and life as one vocation, a craft or discipline that was both practical and spiritually fulfilling. For example, a blacksmith would have made a living from his craft while also drawing meaning from the work. Task number 3. Embrace a non-linear path. The path to mastery is long and winding, Greene says. You won't find the perfect path right from the start, but if you persevere and follow your inner sense of direction, the right opportunities will come your way. Are there age limits to mastery? While Greene argues that you can start the journey to mastery at any age, he also contradicts himself with some of his examples. For instance, Mozart began his musical training at the age of 4, and without such an early start, he might not have reached the heights he did. Further, Greene states that the most exceptional masters felt an intense calling since early childhood, which would contradict his assertion that you can find it whenever and still become a master. However, this doesn't mean that you can't pursue mastery at a later age. Just that, depending on the field, chances are slim that you'll become world-class. You don't need fame to be happy, though, as George Leonard puts it in Mastery. The keys to success and long-term fulfillment. Fulfillment comes not from fame, recognition, or rewards, but from the labor of love that is consistent, diligent practice. In Why We Make Things and Why It Matters, Peter Korn supports this. A lifelong carpenter and furniture maker, Korn frequently teaches middle-aged and elderly people his craft, and he says that many find meaning in the simple, meticulous effort of it. Stage number 1. Foundational Training. Having established a connection to your inner voice and committed to acting in accord with it, it's time to pursue your foundational training. Greene explains that all masters undergo a rigorous, self-directed practical education after finishing conventional education in school, which teaches mostly theory. This practical education involves 3 tasks, which we'll cover below: learning the ropes of your field, developing key skills, and testing your progress. Short-form note. In Black Box Thinking, Matthew Syed argues that practice and theory develop in tandem. That is, people with practical knowledge often innovate without comprehensive theoretical knowledge. Think of the Wright brothers creating airplanes through trial and error. At the same time, theory often leads to practical advances. For instance, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution began with an idea, yet it has sparked immense change in science and culture. Task number 1. Learn the ropes. Greene explains that in any career field, there are existing rules, norms, and conventions that people follow. Learn these to ensure you can navigate your field and avoid offending people's sensibilities. There are explicit rules and implicit rules. Number 1. Explicit rules. These are the stated rules and conventions. For instance, a university gives graduate students attendance and performance expectations. Number 2. Implicit rules. These are unspoken rules that govern social and power dynamics. For instance, new graduate students might be expected to defer to older students. Greene recommends staying inconspicuous when you first enter a field. Patiently learning the ropes teaches you to keep an open mind, set aside your assumptions, and observe before acting, which, according to Greene, are key life skills and traits of masters. Patient practice brings opportunity. In So Good They Can't Ignore You, Cal Newport echoes Greene's advice to start by building your skills. Newport advises that you first build skills that give you career capital. That is, develop scarce, in-demand skills that afford you access to prized jobs. If you have the right skill set to secure a rewarding, niche job, such as a luthier, then you gain the autonomy and meaning of that prized work. Avoid depending on the supposed truism that matching your passion and your work will bring you fulfillment. That's not usually true, Newport asserts. Instead, take on the mindset of a craftsperson. Focus on what you bring to the table and work continually to hone those skills. The better you get, the more opportunities will open to you. Once you've developed a highly valuable, scarce skill set, such as proficiency in an emerging coding language, you have leverage to negotiate with your employer for increased autonomy. Newport describes autonomy as the dream job elixir, and he contends that it will make you happier and more productive at work since you're more in control of what you do. Task number 2. Develop your skills. Alongside your observation, begin to train your technical abilities. Every field has its skills, and you'll need technical proficiency to achieve mastery. Greene recommends starting with one skill that underpins others in your field. For example, an aspiring novelist could learn to brainstorm and organize her thoughts before trying more complex aspects of creative writing. Short-form note. In The Art of Learning, Chess and Tai Chi champion Josh Waitzkin recommends studying the elements of your skill one at a time, and then putting them together. This way, you first grasp the simplest aspects of the skill. Then, you learn to navigate more complex uses of the skill. For instance, a pole vaulter should learn how to hold the pole, how to run with it, and how to plant it in the box, all before attempting to vault. According to Greene, hands-on learning is the best way to develop a skill. Here's how he recommends to practice. Imitate a master. Find someone who's mastered a skill and observe them. Imitate their actions, and repeat until you've grasped each aspect of the skill. Push through tedium. Practice is often tiresome, but pushing through tedium helps you mature. By showing up every day, you'll develop the patience and humility to become good at anything. Build momentum. As you practice, you'll get better. As you get better, you'll come to enjoy practice. As you come to enjoy practice, you'll want to practice more. This flywheel cycles around, giving momentum to your skill building. As you practice, your brain develops to handle the skills you're building. With time and repetition, they'll become second nature. How to practice. Greene emphasizes the value of hands-on learning, but he stops short of explaining how to practice effectively. In The Art of Learning, Josh Waitzkin offers several specific techniques. Analyze your mistakes. When you slip up, note what went wrong and reflect on it until you understand the mistake. Then, practice the correct technique. Update your habits. In any skill, we settle into habitual responses. Regularly examine your default choices and cull any that no longer work well. Slow it down. In developing a physical skill, moving slowly teaches your body smooth, effective form. Speed up only once you've refined a technique in slow mo. Greene also writes that practicing at least 10,000 hours guarantees mastery of any skill, citing the 10,000-hour rule from Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. However, Gladwell likely misrepresented that research. K. Anders Ericsson, the psychologist upon whose work Gladwell based his number, explains that Gladwell took the average practice time of a group of elite violinists, around 10,000 hours, generalized it to all fields without evidence, and called it a magic number for success. Given this, focus instead on learning to love the practice, and don't worry about the end goal. The journey is the point. Task number 3. Test your progress. Once you've acclimated to your field and built your skills, Greene recommends seeking feedback by demonstrating what you've learned. To do this, take on some responsibility at work, such as a project or an initiative with which you can test your progress. Begin to test your progress before you feel ready. When you publicly test your skills, you'll gain objective feedback from your peers and superiors. Avoid taking it personally. Feedback isn't strictly supportive, so remain objective and improve the weaknesses that it reveals. Short-form note. In Thanks for the Feedback, Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen explained that learning to receive feedback well helps you learn and grow, while resisting feedback causes problems and stagnation. We often react instinctively to feedback, and such strong emotions can get in the way of learning. To overcome this, the authors recommend becoming mindful of how you react and separating your emotions from the objective content of the feedback. Become socially adept. In addition to a practical education, Greene argues that true mastery requires social know-how. This is because other people can make or break your career trajectory. If you're socially naive, ill-intentioned people can exploit you or hinder your progress. If you're socially skillful, you can avoid conflict and maintain harmonious relations in your field. This allows you to focus on your work, and it can open doors to new opportunities. You can master the technical aspects of a skill without social know-how. However, Greene asserts that the idea of the lone genius is a myth. Every great master reaches genius by engaging and collaborating with others in her field. The myth of the lone genius. While Greene emphasizes that social know helps you avoid trouble and focus, it's also true that a healthy social life can enrich your creative life. It's a common misconception that artists or scientists succeed on their own. Rather, many collaborate and draw inspiration from the wider community of artists. In other words, living within a social network of artists, philosophers, or scientists is like being part of a wider ecosystem, within which there are numerous perspectives, experiences, and insights that cross-pollinate with each other. While some individuals stand out as the most exceptional, they don't do it alone. For instance, think of the ancient Greeks. They created places such as Aristotle's Lyceum, where people gathered to learn, teach, and engage in dialogue. Thus, any Greek philosopher had a rich community of creative thinkers within which to develop his ideas. In contrast, imagine if Aristotle had no other philosophers to dialogue with, and no background of past philosophy upon which to develop his ideas. Learn to read people. Greene suggests that a key element of social know-how is developing a realistic perspective of human nature and discarding any social naivete left over from childhood. He argues that people probably aren't as good as you think, and he recommends that you avoid trying to change them. Instead, learn to work with them or make use of them. Short-form note. In contrast to Greene's advice to view people as obstacles, Leonard recommends in How to Talk to Anyone that you practice putting others at ease. Since most people worry about being liked, showing people that you like them creates easeful social interactions. This can also open doors to opportunities you'd otherwise miss out on. To develop this realistic perspective, learn to read people. Do so by dropping your preconceptions and observing people. Since we present our best faces in public, Greene recommends spending a few months learning to see through that mask and grasp someone's true character. He gives 3 tactics. Tactic number 1. Observe how he communicates. Greene explains that people reveal their emotions, attitude, and beliefs in how they communicate. Observe a person's tone of voice, choice of words, and body language. Tactic number 2. Step into his shoes. Imagine how he feels and look for commonalities like shared emotional pains. These will give you a better sense of who he is. Tactic number 3. Observe his behavior. Pay attention to how he behaves in every area of life, such as how he acts around his superiors and his spouse. Observe his level of discipline and work ethic. Each of these hints further at who he is and why. Body language tells all. In How to Talk to Anyone, Leonard argues body language and nonverbal cues communicate much of what there is to know about someone. Within the first few seconds of seeing someone, we typically judge their personality type, levels of self-confidence, and social status, and these impressions are often accurate. In addition to Greene's observational techniques, consider Lowndes' tactics for creating a positive first impression. Stand with good, relaxed posture. Appearing confident and open makes you look approachable, and it also helps you feel more sure of yourself. Make eye contact. Lowndes says that prolonged eye contact signals interest, and it can encourage attraction. However, use this with caution. Aggressive eye contact can come off as arrogant or weird. Pretend you're already good friends with the other person. Lowndes says that this helps you relax and send positive signals automatically. Find a mentor. While self-directed learning can take you far, Greene asserts that finding a mentor will accelerate and enrich your learning. Attract a mentor by appealing to her self-interest. According to Greene, mentors are often busy and won't mentor just anyone. Demonstrate that you'll do unglamorous work, such as organizational and administrative tasks, and that you have discipline and drive. Mentorship has 3 major benefits, according to Greene. Benefit number 1. Inheritance of knowledge, experience, and spirit. A mentor passes on to you her years of experience and creative development. You'll also receive the accumulation of wisdom that she gained from her mentor. Benefit number 2. Direct guidance. A one-on-one relationship allows a mentor to tailor her instruction to your needs. She can teach with nuance and precision, transmitting her technical knowledge and the spirit of her craft in a way that books or large classes can't. Benefit number 3. Enriched learning. Greene explains that the mentor-mentee relationship creates an emotional connection that enriches the learning process. When you, the mentee, feel emotionally invested, you'll learn more deeply, and when your mentor feels emotionally invested, she'll teach more passionately. Potential pitfalls of mentorship. Mentorship can be powerful, but everything has pros and cons. The Harvard Business Review describes 5 signs that might indicate bad advice from a mentor. Bias toward his preferences. In other words, he may be biased toward shaping you to be like him and encourage choices similar to his, rather than tailoring advice to you. Self-interest. Consciously or not, a mentor might encourage choices that benefit him, such as remaining in a position over which he has influence. Incompatible risk tolerance. If you and your mentor have a different appetite for risk, he might encourage or discourage choices conversely to your own opinions. Mismatched expertise. You might end up with a mentor who has little knowledge about a path you want to take, and he may struggle to help you reach your goals. Inattentiveness. Because the mentor has more power, he might not take the time to get to know you well. Because of this, his advice might not fit you as well as it could. None of this is reason to avoid mentorship altogether. Instead, remind yourself that a mentor's word is not infallible. Mentors can give bad advice or make mistakes, so always think for yourself as well as going to a mentor for help. Once you've learned enough, step out of your mentor's shadow. Stay long enough to absorb her wisdom, spirit, and expertise, but do not remain so long that you grow comfortable or complacent. Some mentors will happily support your growth, while others may resent your departure. In either case, reflect on what you've learned and set off in your own direction. Short-form note: the Harvard Business Review also recommends ending a mentor-mentee relationship once it's run its course. If you've learned all you can or the relationship no longer has good rapport, consider moving on. To do so, reflect on what you've learned and where you'll go next, then express your gratitude to your mentor and make a clean break. Stage number 2. Creative independence. Once you've completed your foundational training, it's time to step out into the world. In this section, we'll explain the second stage of mastery, creative independence. In this stage of mastery, you begin to pursue your own inclinations. You've built a solid foundation of skills and knowledge, and you can now apply them to develop your ideas, whether you want to explore a new form of art or a scientific theory. In doing so, you'll gain recognition and start to make a name for yourself. To achieve creative independence, Greene advises that you avoid becoming rigid. After years of foundational training, you might settle into learned conventions and familiar ways of thinking that reduce your creativity. Prevent this stagnation by taking the 3 steps to cultivate a creative mind. Commit to a creative project, pursue it to fruition, and persist through emotional obstacles. Curate your influences. In Steal Like an Artist, Austin Kleon suggests amplifying your creativity by surrounding yourself with art that you love. In his view, there's no such thing as a wholly original idea. All artists are influenced by others. While this may seem unfortunate, Kleon recommends embracing that you don't need to be original, and you can instead focus on what you love. To curate your influences, fill your studio or workspace with art from artists that inspire you. Records, paintings, posters, music, or whatever else. Further, Kleon suggests copying the work of artists you love to learn how they created it and practice your technique. For instance, you might deep dive into the portfolio of your favorite painter, studying her work and figuring out how she does it. Then, what you've learned will enrich your own process and repertoire of techniques. Cultivate a creative mind. According to Greene, achieving creative independence requires you to develop a certain kind of mind, a flexible, explorative mind that combines childlike wonder with the experience and skills from your foundational training. He explains the 3 types of mind we can have as we mature. Mind number 1, the child's mind. In childhood, we're naturally open and bright-eyed. Children unashamedly ask unusual, piercing questions about things that adults take for granted, such as why the sky is blue. Greene says the child's mind embraces wonder and openness, but it lacks experience or practical skills. Mind number 2, the conditioned mind. As we age, we gain skills and experience, and we're conditioned by our cultures to look at the world in a certain way. We become more experienced, yet also more conventional and prone to rigid, uncreative thinking. Such an adult might scoff and dismiss a child's question as naive and silly. Mind number 3, the creative mind. The rare few, masters, combine the wonder and openness of children with the experience and knowledge of adults. This produces a mind that can think freely and execute with discipline. That is, a master can produce highly creative ideas and has the discipline to act on them. Could myelination cause a rigid mind? While Greene argues for the existence of 3 types of mind, he doesn't provide any research to support his claim. However, his assertion that the mind becomes rigid over time might follow from the fact that regularly used neural pathways undergo myelination. Every time you perform an action, the corresponding neurons, or brain cells, send signals to each other along neural pathways via fibers called axons. The axons are wrapped in a fatty insulating tissue called myelin, which accelerates transmission speed. The more you practice a skill, the more myelinated those axons become, and the more effortlessly you'll perform the action. For instance, well-myelinated neural pathways for soccer yield second-nature soccer skills, In other words, they become automatic. When a daily routine becomes automatic, we call it a habit. We often carry out our habits unconsciously, taking them for granted as who we are, even if we haven't consciously examined where those habits came from. What Greene warns against is the crystallization of these habits. In the brain, they become heavily myelinated, thus hard not to perform. Commit to a creative project. The first step in cultivating a creative mind is to commit to a creative project. Any master has a project that calls to them. Find what you're naturally drawn to in your field, a project you feel like you're meant for, by listening to your inner sense of direction. Feeling deeply connected to the project helps you stay committed when things get tough. Greene recommends finding this project by reflecting on the disagreements you have with the existing paradigm in your field. Creativity means pushing boundaries, so finding an opportunity to challenge accepted answers can lead to highly creative work. Short-form note. In The Art of Learning, Josh Waitzkin argues that staying true to your personal style is crucial to success, even if it goes against the accepted wisdom. In his view, honoring your style grounds you and sustains your passion for the skill. When Waitzkin was forced by a disciplinarian chess teacher to play in a way that went against his intuition, he fell out of love with the game. Later, he found his passion in Tai Chi, a martial art that allowed him to express his chess intuition in a wholly new way. Keep your mind flexible. As you pursue your project, practice stretching your mind to remain creative. According to Greene, our minds naturally tighten up over time. That is, we settle into certain ways of thinking. However, sticking with what you know isn't creativity. Greene offers several practices for keeping your mind flexible. Practice number 1. Sit with uncertainty. When faced with difficult questions or uncertainties, patiently ponder the unknown and remain open to all possibilities. Taking the time to consider every angle surfaces novel ideas and prevents you from recycling familiar answers as a shortcut. Short-form note. In contemporary psychotherapy, Diana Voller writes of negative capability as the ability to remain in the mystery of the unknown and to allow uncertainty to persist. She argues that while this is likely easier for certain personality types, you can develop it by engaging with the big questions. Things like, what is the purpose of art? Or, what does it mean to contribute to the world? These questions demand well-thought-out answers, so you'll need to wade through uncertainty to reach worthwhile conclusions. Practice number 2. Stimulate chance associations. Greene explains that creative ideas often come from chance associations of seemingly unrelated ideas. Create the conditions for fortuitous associations by regularly relaxing. Our best ideas often come to us when we loosen up, since the mind can defocus and wander freely. Short-form note. In Steal Like an Artist, Austin Kleon corroborates Greene's advice. He suggests setting aside regular time for hobbies and allowing yourself to feel bored. Hobbies can spur new connections. For instance, sketching can improve your ability to visualize a work-related project. Feeling bored allows your mind to wander, so that you find ideas you otherwise wouldn't encounter. Practice number 3. Iterate your ideas. According to Greene, masters alternate between working on their ideas and testing what they've worked out. For example, a scientist might observe something, such as gravity, and develop an initial theory, then test it to validate her ideas. Short-form note. In Black Box Thinking, Matthew Syed recommends learning and innovating through trial and error, much like Greene's advice above. Syed argues that mistakes show you where and how your ideas are wrong, thus revealing what you need to do to improve. Each time you learn from a mistake, you take a step forward. In fact, Syed argues that this is the basis of all learning. That is, mistakes are intrinsic to the learning process. Practice number 4. Use all your senses. Greene explains that many of our senses are stronger than language-based thinking. Visual memory is stronger than linguistic memory, and drawing, visualizing, and diagramming your ideas can spark creative associations and improve your mental model of the ideas. In addition, some masters used scents, sounds, or colors to stimulate them. Short-form note. One study suggests that synesthetes, people who experience synesthesia or sensory mixing, have a greater ability to form creative associations. For example, some synesthetes associate visual input with sound, seeing colors when you hear music or vice versa, so they can produce creative audiovisual media, such as music videos. This supports Greene's notion that diverse sensory input bolsters creativity. Create a major insight. According to Greene, past masters all reached their highest achievements by pushing through intense creative tension and, ultimately, letting go to allow the solutions to arise. He outlines this way of reaching a major insight as follows. 1. The aspiring master first gathers ideas and experiments before deciding on her direction. 2. She then pursues her work with intense focus, using various strategies such as those in the previous section. 3. Due to this intense focus and the natural doubts and struggles of creative works, she builds toward a point of very high tension. At this point, she struggles to complete her work. 4. Greene asserts that she must step away from the work and rest. By getting away from the source of her tension, she allows her mind space to loosen up and freely associate the ideas she's been working with. Then, her mind can synthesize the ultimate solution to her work. This process of working through a peak of tension, Greene says, is what led masters like Einstein, who allegedly gave up on his project just before finding the solution, to do their greatest works. Short-form note. In Steal Like an Artist, Austin Kleon recommends using tension and limitations to improve your work. Giving yourself fewer options encourages resourcefulness, because you have less to work with. For instance, you might try to compose a song with only 3 notes. Overcome emotional obstacles. As Greene explains, performing creative work in a public arena means you'll come under scrutiny. Self-doubt and inner tension are part and parcel of the creative life, and you can navigate them by watching for the following traps. Obstacle number 1. Cynicism. As we learn and gain experience, many people grow cynical and believe they've seen it all. Avoid this by embracing wonder and remaining humble. Obstacle number 2. Self-importance. Don't let praise go to your head. Instead, focus on your creative process and counterbalance praise by regularly critiquing your own work. Obstacle number 3. Dependence. When you become independent, you might flounder and seek outside approval. To avoid this, become self-reliant and set your own standards. Obstacle number 4. Mental rigidity. Greene explains that creativity requires constant fluctuation between intense focus and relaxed optimism. Avoid fixating on either extreme, and learn to focus or relax as needed. Obstacle number 5. Impatience. Significant creative work takes time and effort, and it's easy to get impatient. Instead, do your best every day, and work patiently toward your goals. More obstacles to mastery. In Mastery, The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment, George Leonard similarly describes 13 pitfalls that can knock you off the path to mastery. Like Greene, he cites laziness, impatience, ego, self-importance, and excessive seriousness, mental rigidity. He adds a few others. Being overly goal-oriented. While reaching milestones does matter, you need to keep your eyes on the path to get there. Over or under competitiveness. Competition motivates us to refine our skills to ever greater heights, but focusing excessively on first place will make you egotistical. Reward-seeking. People tend to stop trying when they get a reward, like a medal or recognition. In other words, rewards can make you complacent. Inconsistency. If you lack routines, you'll have a harder time showing up for practice and making steady progress. Mastery. After spending years developing your creative independence, you'll eventually achieve mastery. According to Greene, mastery comes about when you merge rational thinking with sophisticated intuition, using your experience and learned skills as well as your openness and intuition to explore novel ideas and thoroughly work them out. However, Greene argues, Western culture often fails to recognize this powerful combination because it esteems rationality above other forms of thinking and mythologizes high-level intuition. Rational thinking involves laying out the steps you took, showing your work so that others can scrutinize your process and conclusions. We consider this valid thinking because it's easy to show how you got from a B and replicate the process. However, high-level creative insights can't be explained so easily. They depend on complex, nonlinear intuition and lack clear steps from a B. As a result, people attribute such insights to mystical forces like genius or talent. Intuition is fallible. In Thinking, Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman argues that we have two cognitive systems. System 1 represents quick, intuitive judgments, and System 2 represents slow, deliberative reasoning. This model mirrors Greene's articulation of how masters create. They use both the instinctive snap decisions of System 1 and the meticulous reasoning of System 2. However, Kahneman emphasizes that these systems are prone to error. System 1 functions on heuristics. That is, it references known patterns and solutions to help us make judgments, but these often shortcut the full complexity of a situation. If System 2 uncritically accepts System 1's input, you're likely to err. Keep this in mind, and try to reason through your ideas when you've had plenty of rest. Stress makes System 2 more prone to biased thinking. In this section, we'll explain how a master reaches this high-level mental skillfulness, and how it gives him a broader perspective of his field. Intuition comes from experience. Greene explains that high-level intuition is a result of the brain's ability to develop new instincts. Like other animals, humans used to depend on our instincts to swiftly and effectively navigate the world. As we evolved, we began to use reason and abstract thinking to learn more about our environments. Unlike instinct, knowledge gained through reasoning is at first slow and ineffective. You'll make mistakes when, for instance, you learn to shoot a bow or track deer. However, learned skills gain the speed and accuracy of instincts with enough experience. When you study a field or skill for a long time, you develop an intuitive feel for it, gaining instincts for math, art, or writing. With that intuition, you can make quick, accurate judgments and freely explore the environment in which you think, work, and create. Short-form note. In The Art of Learning, Josh Waitzkin explains that once you've practiced a skill for long enough, it becomes second nature. He calls this form to leave form. Start with a single element of your skill, such as dribbling a soccer ball. Practice it in isolation, doing that and nothing else. Start slowly and develop good form, then repeat it slowly until you can execute the skill with ease. Gradually speed it up, and you'll master that element of the skill. Then, you can combine it with others. Reason can validate intuitions. While her insights come from this well-developed intuition, the master also uses reason to work them out. Greene writes that coming to the insight is the first step, validating it is the second. In the sciences, a master would use tests and other methods to gather evidence, investigate her hunches, and develop a valid explanation of what she first understood intuitively. In the arts, a master would take his insight and see if it'll work in reality. Until he works that out, it'll remain an idea. For example, a musician might hear beautiful music in his head, but then he needs to figure out how to play it. Testing is the key to validating ideas. Greene stops short of explaining specifically how to use reason to validate your ideas, but in Black Box Thinking, Matthew Syed offers a few techniques. In his view, the key is to thoroughly test your ideas with reliable methods that give you objective feedback. In the sciences, a randomized control trial, RCT, is the gold standard for testing a hypothesis. An RCT isolates the effect of an experimental variable by comparing it with a control group. For instance, you'd give coffee to one group and a coffee-like placebo to a second group, not telling them which is which. The difference between the group's results tells you what the coffee did. In creative fields such as art or entrepreneurship, creators can test their ideas by releasing a minimum viable product, MVP, to the public. An MVP is a cost-effective, bare-bones prototype of your idea that's meant to demonstrate its potential. Use an MVP to gather feedback, and you'll know whether to scrap or improve your ideas. Masters see the flow of their fields. Greene argues that with high-level intuition and reason, a master grasps her field as a whole, and she becomes attuned to its dynamic. In other words, she sees how the parts fit together and flow as one whole, and she intuitively senses the dynamic, evolving form of it all. The master develops this sense by spending long years working hard at her craft. She studies and absorbs all aspects of the field, the leading mental models and paradigms of thought, the procedures and techniques, the social and power dynamics, as well as the history and present state of things. Imagine a seasoned copywriter who's been at it for 2 decades. She knows it all. She's mastered the fundamentals, plus all the nuances and subtleties of writing good copy. She understands human psychology and the various roles and styles of copywriting. She knows where the field has been, she can see where things are going, and she understands how she fits into the overall business landscape. Altogether, she's tuned in to the dynamic, evolving state of the field. That is, she sees the forest and the trees, and she navigates them with ease. Greene argues that as your brain comes to encompass more and more of the patterns and parts that make up your field, your inner landscape of mental models comes to reflect the full complexity of reality. In his view, this means you're attuned to the essence of reality, and you see it more truly than a non-master would. Erikson's mental representations and Greene's dynamic. In Peak K, Anders Ericsson discusses an experiment in which professional and amateur soccer players were asked to predict how a soccer match would develop. They were shown video footage of the match and, when it was paused and hidden, the experimenters asked each player to recount the positions of the players and describe what would most likely happen next. As expected, the experienced players could make reasonably accurate predictions, while the amateur players were less accurate. Much like Greene describes, the professionals could read the field like a book, tuning into the dynamic, flowing patterns of play. Ericsson attributes this ability to the professionals' super-mental representations. In short, they had internalized thorough knowledge of the principles and patterns of soccer, so they could mentally model the flow of play far more accurately than less experienced players who lacked these mental models. Mastery is a lifelong journey. Greene explains that time and effort inevitably yield mastery. He asserts that it takes around 20,000 hours. In other words, you'll get there guaranteed if you put in the hours. Short-form note: Greene doesn't provide any research to support this number. In contrast, it simply doubles Malcolm Gladwell's popular 10,000-hour rule, which he explains in Outliers. However, the time you spend developing mastery must be intense and committed. You can't just go through the motions, because half-hearted practice yields half-hearted results. Show up with vigor and verve, putting everything you've got into your work and taking every opportunity to learn, and you'll reap far fuller rewards. Short-form note: in Peak K, Anders Ericsson further explains that how you practice makes all the difference. It must be purposeful and deliberate. Like Greene, he stresses the importance of intense focus. He also advises setting clear, specific goals, getting immediate feedback, and stretching your comfort zone in a continual effort to improve. In the end, masters actually become spiritually younger by living in accord with their creative drive. Such a master has developed his potential and his brain so thoroughly that, as Greene puts it, he comes into contact with reality. In other words, he understands the full complexity of life, growth, and what it takes to master a field, craft, or discipline. Short-form note: in Mastery, The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment, George Leonard explains that part of the master's youthfulness comes from allowing himself to act the fool, not to be stupid, but to allow and embrace his childlike sense of wonder and foolish naivete. Thus, the master is free to make mistakes, explore and experiment with what fascinates him, and, over time, remain in contact with that sense of wonder that brings joy and fulfillment to life.